Dear God, in this moment I reach for the light. When the path seems uncertain and hope feels out of sight, guide me through the darkness. Let your love be my guide. In the depths of my struggles, I know you're by my side. When the world fades away, I find myself wandering through memories, tracing the lines of who I used to be. In the quiet night, when the world fades away, I find myself wandering through memories, tracing the lines of who I used to be. A tapestry woven with dreams and scars, each thread a story, each color a part of the journey that shaped me, the battles I fought. In the mirror I see a reflection, a mosaic of moments, a collection of lessons. From laughter to tears, from joy to despair, every heartbeat whispers, you're still standing there. Who I am is a melody, a rhythm of my soul, a symphony of hopes, a tale yet to be told. I'm the echoes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Live Dream Survivors podcast. Today we're going to be talking about mental health awareness. We're going to be talking about topics that fall under domestic violence abuse under mental health awareness month.
Yeah, correct.
I have Mr. Renard Stevens on here today joining me. He's gonna share some of his experience with mental health awareness. And so some of the things that most domestic violence abuse survivors experience after abuse is depression.
Yes, ma'am.
PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety. Would you like to elaborate on some of those things?
Yeah, when it comes to PTSD, that's the trauma that someone has experienced that they are unable to get past. So, some kind of traumatic experience has happened to them in their life. It could be abuse, it could be neglect, it could be abandonment, and that triggers all of the issues that they deal with for the rest of their life as far as getting past that trauma. It's just trickled and filtered in throughout the rest of their life unless they get some kind of help. Might need therapy, could be medication, it could be just a change of scenery, like move to a whole different location. It could be a lot that and a lot of people from wars, veterans, they suffer from PTSD through all the trauma that they seen while they were fighting in battles and away in different countries and lands, and seeing their comrades injured or killed, or having to fight off the enemy and kill and injure a lot of people. So and one of the episodes we did on our show, Cupcakes and Conversations, we were talking about trauma relating from slavery and how that trickled down into the way we live nowadays, and we don't even pay attention to the signs and the symptoms of that trauma from slavery, and it's right around us every day.
It's passed on. It's a cycle.
Yes.
It's passed on. Yeah. I could say for myself, with experience with domestic violence abuse, and going to counseling a couple of years later, I got diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety. But along with that, I was also diagnosed with major depression disorder, which is something that starts as a child and it continues on. A lot of times we all walk around and we don't know that we're suffering from depression, because depression isn't something that is spoken.
It's talked about, though. Not at the family picnics or the barbecues or cookouts, no. And the difference between major depression and just being depressed is the time frame. A person can be depressed for a day or two and then get over it. Things in their life change. Something happy or exciting happens in their life, so they're not feeling that way. But a person suffering from major depression, that's an extended period of time. We're talking about weeks to months of that same mindset, that same mood, those same feelings, and it never alleviates within that time frame. You just feel like a cloud is over you and you're weighed down and nothing's going right for like months at a time.
Mm-hmm. Which I never really paid attention to it like that, Um, even as a kid, I never paid attention to it like
As a
that.
kid, you probably couldn't even verbalize what was happening to you.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, the counselor had told me, "Good evening."
What up, Pastor Mabry?
The counselor was telling me how it started as a child growing up, and I guess just a lot of things. Um, with I was a baby, I guess, when my parents divorced, and so
That is a major trauma. That is.
yeah, and then
Your whole family just got torn apart as a kid. You got to deal with it. You got to grow up that way.
well, my brother, I think he dealt with it more than me because, like I said, I was a baby, so I don't even remember. I just know one day I asked my mom, where was my dad at?
Yeah.
Because I was so used to hearing the kids talk about their dad. I had a male figure in my house, which is my stepfather because she remarried, but I never called him dad. I always called him by his first name. So that's when I realized as I got older, well, where is my dad?
Where is your dad? What happened? He used to be here. Where's he at?
Right.
What's going on, Ma?
Right. And so even as time went on, um, my mom was like an overprotective parent. And so I stopped going outside as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I would stay in the house because I couldn't do what the other kids did. Um, and so it wasn't until I became an adult when a older lady who I look at like a mother figure, she used to tell me that when you are alone all the time, that's not normal. So that's another sign of the depression.
Isolation, yeah.
And so
and you think about it when you're isolated, what is your mind thinking about? Your mind is just racing, everything that's going on in your life, you're just focusing on and just overthinking.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I just started tuning into music and movies. So I guess that's why I didn't think it was normal because I was the only child at home. My brother left when I was like 9 years old. So I was the only child at home. So I didn't think that it was something wrong with it, And Dr. Mabry said, what did he say?
We talk about it with insensitivity
and call them crazy or say something is wrong with them.
Person who's dealing with
yeah, that's true. I'm just like kind of sharing some of my experience with it and not thinking that it was something wrong.
But now, as an adult, you can look back at it and it's like, yeah, that was not normal. That was definitely different.
But I'm still like that sometimes. But I guess because of me being by myself, I just got immune to it. You know what I mean?
That just became your lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Rolling solo dolo.
Yeah. And then anxiety part, of course, I didn't start dealing with anxiety until I lived in Maryland, which was like in 2018, 2017. I was sitting on the bed one day and I thought I was having an asthma attack. And I'm like, but I could still breathe. So it's not,
so you like,
an asthma attack, but it's just like you're hyperventilating. And so that was my first experience with anxiety. And so, I mean, all of those things, the anxiety part, the PTSD, it like for me, PTSD could have came from the abuse. It could have came from car accidents, any type of trauma that happen to you in your life. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so, you know, how I prevent those things, I tell a person quick, do not sneak up on me.
That's
You
true.
know, let me know that you are there.
'Cause you might swing on them, right? You get startled.
Yeah. And so, what are some of your experiences?
Well, I'm glad you asked. On the way over here, I was thinking about it, and I recall when I was in college, I was dating a woman from Chicago who was in a sorority.
Not a woman from Chicago.
She sure was. All the way out in Missouri. And we met up and we both was from Chicago. It was crazy. But while I was dating her,
Hello.
another female said that she was interested.
Okay.
You know, she was like, I don't want you to be my man. I just, you know,
I want to have time.
I want to have a fun time. So I ended up breaking up with the girl from Chicago, and the one who was the fun time girl became my main girlfriend at the time. But it was so toxic that we used to argue and fight all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had told Tanisha this at some points. She would be in my apartment. I'm like, you got to go. I'm not about to argue with you all night long. And I would pull out a knife, like, get out of my apartment. You know what she would do? She'd go get a knife. So we both standing there with knives. Like, I ain't going away. You gonna leave? I ain't going away. It was terrible.
So did you know at that time what you were experiencing? You was experiencing some abuse too.
Of course not. I didn't know. I just knew she needed to leave, and she didn't want to leave. That's all I knew, and that began to happen on a regular. And I just knew that this, like, I've dated people before that, and it wasn't like something like this. Something wrong between me and her. We just not a good mix, you know.
She could be just an abusive woman. Something that she may have seen. Her mother could have been abusive to her father, which is why she felt like it was okay to do what she did to you.
Definitely could have been a possibility, but thank God that relationship ended.
Well, thank God y'all didn't do harm to each other with those knives.
No, we did not. Well, it happened. We did that multiple times to each other, poured out the knives. But no, the only time I can recall actually being physically violent was, I remember we was in a theater, and I love going to the show. I don't know if you notice, I'm a cinephile. I love movies. And she started an argument before the movie even started. And I got so pissed off, I took my big tub of popcorn and I hit upside the head with it. And then we argued and we left. So we didn't even see the movie. But that was about
with the popcorn.
I don't know what we was arguing about. I can't remember, but it was a bad argument. Very bad. But that's as far
right. That was abusive.
That's as far as it went with the physical abuse. We just sat there and cursed each other out, you know, being disrespectful.
Y'all was verbally abusing, emotionally abusing.
Correct.
To each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what you say, that was all that you experienced, or?
Yeah, as far as that, and the situation with my wife, which we talked about on the show before.
Yeah.
The one time we got into a physical altercation.
Yeah.
But and also thinking about it, which is another topic I brought up on the show, my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
My whole life I grew up with my grandmother on my dad's side, and my grandfather was never around. But it wasn't until I was a mature adult when I had a sit-down discussion with my dad, and I was just like, why was granddaddy not around? Why was he never, I'm thinking he might have been dead or something, but I end up going to his funeral. So I'm like, why was he never around when I was growing up? And my father was like, well, he used to abuse. He used to abuse your grandmother. He used to get physical and violent with her on a regular basis. So at one point, she just decided enough is enough and, put him out and got a divorce from him. So those are kind of traumas that be happening in a family that people don't discuss.
Talk about.
They don't discuss it. Like, I would have never known my grandparents were separated because of domestic violence until I asked that question. So if we're not talking about it on a regular basis, hey, First Lady Mabry, we're not talking about it on a regular basis. Yeah, I hadn't looked at the screen. Yeah. So if we're not talking about how we're going to deal with it as a people, if you're not discussing those kind of things within your family, then they're going to keep happening and keep happening. And the cycle is going to keep going.
I was talking to my aunt about that about a week ago. And I was just telling her about the podcast and the things that I talk about and how to break our family cycle and how we need to talk more and more about the things that happen, within our family, like as far as them being sexually abused or assaulted or whatever the case may be. And like I told her, like, instead of saying, well, don't be left alone with this person, explain to me why not to be left alone? Because what if something would have happened and it could have been avoided had you just explained to me, hey,
Chester is a child molester. Stay away from Chester.
Right. You know what I mean? And so she was in agreement with me when I was just saying how some things need to be talked about. And I can also go back and my mom's not here anymore, but I could just think about some of the things that she used to do, which to me was something that was continued on from my grandmother, through some of her girls, where, once they've been hurt, they become bitter and they treat that man so bad, instead of just separating themselves or leaving. I can recall a few times that my mother would like cuss my stepfather out really bad. And the one time she did it in front of my daughter. My daughter was like 2 years old. And I then at that point was trying to get my own place anyway, because I was a mother and it's hard raising your kids in the same household with your parent.
It is.
And so that was just some things that I just didn't want my daughter to see growing up. Because at that point I felt like some of the things that she would say would be too much. It turns into verbal abuse instead of just walking away from the situation.
I can also remember my great grandmother on my mother's side. Whenever we were being difficult children, not following the rules, disobedient, whatever it was that would piss her off, she would say, "Go out there and get me a switch off that tree." And I did that one time.
Good. That was from
she's from the
South. Yeah.
So I did that one time, and I came back with a switch about that big, and she was like, "Oh, okay, you want to play with me? All right." So she went out and got a switch that big, but I brought that up because that was the tool she used, and I was used to that. I knew if I got in trouble, Grandma was gonna get a switch. But my mother, whenever I would make her angry as a kid, she would hit me with anything, whatever was in reach. We're talking about shoes, extension cords, mop,
and they
mop
wasn't
handles.
Missed.
No,
it wasn't missed.
But as
did
a
that
kid,
affect you?
Yeah, as a kid, you don't really think about what's happening to you until you're done. You're like, you know what? I think a hand would have been just enough to spank me with than whatever objects you could find near you. So it wasn't until, as you said, how it affected me. I got older when I realized that that's abuse right there. That wasn't just a whooping. That was abuse. When you're getting hit with objects, whatever is immediately in the vicinity that could do some harm or hurt you, that's physical abuse.
I could say for me, I started off disciplining my children the old school way, but when I became a child care provider and started taking classes, I started trying different methods of abusing. I mean, not abusing,
discipline.
But discipline my children. And some was effective and some wasn't.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff that in the textbook, it depends on the children.
And see, with having children that had disabilities, because my kids were preemies, two of my twins were preemies. So it's like my one son, I just thought was bad till I had to really just realize that he just really didn't understand. Correct. That's why he would look at you and laugh, because he didn't understand. You know what I mean? So I start going different routes and teaching him different ways. And it worked somewhat.
I mean, like for some kids, grounding works. You can't go outside because they love to go outside and play, have fun with their friends, playing tag, athletic, situation like where you can go play basketball. But if a kid likes to be at home and you ground them, that's doing nothing to them. This is it, right? This is where they want to be. Now you take away that video game system. Now that's a different form of discipline. You can't use your phone, no cell phone, no regular phone, no house phone. That might drive some kids like, be overwhelming for them because they used to being on the phone all day. So it's got to be tailor made for. It got to be like a case by case situation when it comes to disciplining your kids. But there are so many different punishments out there that you can use that's not physical. You can make a kid stand there and hold some books or make a kid write a poem. I've been seeing this new trend on TikTok or whatever social media where you make the kid dance to the video that's in the background.
Oh no, like one of my kids, because he has a disability, he doesn't understand. I make him go look up, Google what it is that he got in trouble for, and I make him write a paper.
There you go.
Then I make him look up a scripture in the Bible pertaining to what he is in trouble for. Like, say if he was lying, go look up me a scripture that's talking about lying and what God, how does God feel about lying? Yeah. And then I want you to write me a paper about it. Okay. That's really to help him, Bible and reading.
and then he can retain the knowledge.
Exactly.
Because he had to go search it, find it, write the paper, present it. You got to be creative and think outside the box sometimes.
Yeah.
But
and because I was even as an adult, because my mom yelled at me so much as a kid, I don't like for people to yell at me. I figure we could communicate. If you talk to me, we can communicate. You don't. Good evening. You don't have to yell at me to get your point across. Mm-hmm. So that does something to me when someone yells at me.
It's a trigger.
Yeah, that could be a little anxiety, PTSD right there, because that does something to me when you yell at me. So do you have any other experience with mental illness?
Oh, yeah. So and this is just recent. My mother let out a bombshell to my wife that her mother spent a lot of time in an institute for people with mental illnesses. And she even told my wife that, I took Renard there all the time to visit his grandmother. Like I'm supposed to remember as a kid that my grandma was locked up, in a padded room somewhere. No, I did not know that. So, little by little, a lot of things have been revealed in our family. Like I was explaining, if I had not asked about my grandparents and that whole domestic violence situation, how would I have not known that I could have been repeating the same thing? My grandmother was by herself. She was single, divorced. My parents divorced when I was like, I think younger than 10. Both of them got remarried and divorced again. So those are cycles and patterns that you're seeing, but you're not understanding where they stemming from.
They come from. So, but that goes back to what I said a few shows back. I said that, domestic violence is a family curse.
Correct.
Because it stems down. We have been praying as a family and uprooting generational curses.
Amen.
That's what you have to do to get past it, to get it out of the family so that it doesn't go on generation to generation, your future generation.
Yeah, and that's why we have to talk about it. We can't keep hiding these things, these skeletons in the closet when it comes to our family.
Yeah.
And then they just come jumping out like, oh.
because while you was talking, also on my dad's side, it's a lot. We deal with a lot of mental illness. My grandmother, I believe that's why these things that Renard is speaking about has been revealed. Yes, because you all are actually talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And on my dad's side, I have two aunts that's bipolar. I have, well, my grandmother's deceased now, but she suffered from depression. Um, my one aunt, she has PTSD, depression, anxiety. I'm not sure about the other aunt. She has, I know she's bipolar, and I have four aunts on that side. No, three aunts, and one uncle. He's deceased. So I'm not sure if he suffered from any mental illness or not, but the aunties, two of them is bipolar. One of my twins is bipolar.
Wow.
But that may have come from his father's side because
Okay.
his father is bipolar. And so I didn't know, or I'm gonna say I didn't learn about that side until I moved to Maryland because my family on my dad's side is from the East Coast.
Okay.
And so that was me getting to know them and getting to know the things that they struggle with.
Yeah. So, like, how as adults raising our own kids, how can we be on the lookout for things like domestic violence or mental illness if our family members are keeping it from us? You know, we wouldn't know what to pay attention to if no one ever talked about it. So that's why the communication is so key.
Yes,
And, you know, especially the types, like you say, if you have a history of bipolar on a certain side of your family, then we need to be talking about that. What does that look like? What does the symptoms look like? What is the person, you know, fighting with their whole life? What are they struggling with? What's up, CEO,
Good
Commander in
evening.
Chief?
Yeah, that's really true. And that was my point, you know, of moving around. My mother kept me here as a child, but when I'm gonna say after she passed away, I ventured off and I went and I moved on the other side so that I could get to know that side of the family because I knew her side of the family so well.
Mhm.
And they deal with a lot of mental illness too, that they don't want to get help for. You know what I mean? And so I kind of keep myself in one place because I feel like me and my children have already experienced enough dysfunction where I don't want to be around a lot of that dysfunction stuff.
I mean, if I had to summarize it, I would summarize it with BOLO, as the police call it.
Yeah.
Be on the lookout. You got incest over here. You got child molestation over here. You got a pimp on this side of the family. You know, we need to talk about that so we can be on the lookout for these red flags and, you know, how to address it and keep it away, or who needs the help, the therapy, the pills, whatever it is that they need to help them, you know, get past that.
Yeah.
So,
And there's a lot of people that deal with mental illness. They know they have those issues they struggle with, but they don't want to be medicated, so they self-medicate themselves.
or they don't want to be, you know, labeled.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want the family to look at them in a certain way, so they keep it to themselves. They hide it.
Tanisha said, "What type of domestic violence did you see growing up, Bernard?"
In 1 minute? That's what you mean?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Oh, okay. When it came to my parents, I really never observed them getting physical, but they did argue all the time. Verbal arguments were regular. Somebody was always storming out. Somebody was always kicking somebody out. But yeah, I saw the verbal arguments regularly.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to my father and his second wife, I got to see domestic violence firsthand. I think I mentioned this on our show once when my stepmother caught her own son. He was her oldest child, and he was in the basement, getting some kind of sex act performed on him. And she had a meltdown and kicked the girl out. And he got so mad that he attacked his own mother.
Oh, wow.
And when I'm talking about attack, I mean, he beat her up badly. I don't know if he used a knife. She had to get stitches. She had a huge black eye. And that was my first time, experiencing a child attacking a parent. Who does that? That was like mind blowing to me at the age, I think I'm probably was around 12-ish, I'm thinking, maybe when this occurred. And
so when you see that individual, how do you feel?
She passed away.
Oh, okay.
Not that long ago. But after
what
that,
about the guy that
he passed away like a few years after he attacked his mother. Taken out.
That goes back to the Bible.
Yeah.
He went against his mom.
She had 3 kids. The oldest son was Kevin, the middle child was Kelly, and my younger sister, Keisha. Kevin was murdered a few years after he attacked his mother. My stepsister Kelly was murdered by her boyfriend after she had a baby by him.
Wow.
So it's just Keisha left out of that batch. So yeah, this and
these were your siblings.
That well, like Kevin had a whole different mother and father. Kelly had a whole different mother and father. Keisha shares my dad, so it's my dad and her mother. So like half sister. But yeah, these are my siblings. We didn't grow up under the same roof, but yeah. So you're talking about domestic violence, you're talking about Chicago gun violence, all of this stuff, just
sexual.
All the stuff sprinkling up. But the day that he did attack his mother, I came over later that day when she was in the hospital, and I could still see the blood on the floor in the kitchen from where the fight took place. But when she finally did make it home, I was swollen and black, like swollen closed, and she had stitches all over her body. That was very scary
to see, as a kid. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in to my show today. If there's anyone experiencing any form of abuse, I have a nonprofit which is also called Live Drink Survivors Incorporated, and we put the other card back up.
And abuse comes from so many different aspects,
It does.
As Tasha was told us before, it's verbal, physical, financial. There's so many different ways a person can abuse somebody else.
Yeah. My nonprofit Live Dream Survivors Incorporated is dedicated to creating a safe space for abused women and children recovering from the effects of domestic violence abuse. And we offer support with child placement, housing, and counseling to help rebuild their lives. And you can contact us at 630-286-9514. And good evening. And
what's up, Ramon?
And if you don't feel comfortable or safe with contacting us, you can also contact the domestic abuse hotline. That number is 1-800.
You remember it?
No, I don't.
She said it like she memorized it.
I wasn't pulling it up. It's cleaned out.
Let me go to it real quick.
But yeah, don't suffer in silence. There are different programs out here, different ways that you can get help if you are being a victim of domestic violence abuse.
And the domestic violence abuse national hotline is 1-800-799-7233. And thank you all for tuning in to the Live Dream Survivor show as we talked about abuse as well as the different types of mental illness that occur from a surviving victim of domestic violence abuse, which again is depression, anxiety, and PTSD.
Yeah, and a lot of people, once they are victims of abuse like domestic violence or abandonment or neglect, it's coping skills. A lot of people don't have the coping skills to deal with the abuse, and so you see it the symptoms just spewing out of their body and their life in so many different forms because they just don't know how to handle that trauma.
Yeah, because it's hard. I thank God I was able to continue on. It took some time, and sometimes it still takes a little time.
Of course.
And
there's some people still in it. They know what's happening to them. They know they don't want it to happen, but they feel stuck in the situation.
Give me your phone number one more time.
It's the Live Dream Survivor number is 630-286-286-9514.
You missing the parenthesis.
I don't see it. Make sure I got the number.
Don't be afraid to reach out if you're experiencing any form of domestic violence abuse.
Because there's help available.
Yep. And amen. And we are out.
Come back next week. Tune in.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communications Station.